There is a gray powder sitting in fireplaces and fire pits across the entire world right now that makes ginger roots grow 3 times larger than what most gardeners consider normal. The powder costs absolutely nothing, because most people simply throw it away as worthless waste without a second thought. It contains the exact mineral compound that ginger plants desperately need to produce massive underground rhizomes. It has been used by traditional farmers throughout Asia for thousands of documented years to grow the largest, most potent, and most valuable ginger crops on Earth. You do not need to buy this remarkable substance from any store or garden center. You do not need to order it from any mail-order catalog or online retailer. You do not need a special formula or a proprietary blend or an expensive commercial product. The powder is nothing more than simple wood ash collected from any hardwood fire, and it contains highly concentrated potassium that completely transforms how ginger plants develop and expand underground. Asian ginger farmers have known this powerful secret for over 4,000 documented years of agricultural history. They scattered ash from their daily cooking fires onto their ginger beds before planting each season. They watched with satisfaction as their harvests doubled and tripled compared to untreated plots nearby. They carefully passed this valuable knowledge from parent to child across countless generations as one of the most reliable and consistent techniques in all of traditional agriculture. Then, the commercial fertilizer industry emerged in the modern era and desperately needed customers who would pay money for potassium instead of simply burning wood to obtain it completely free. The simple technique that cost nothing was replaced by products that cost money every single season. The knowledge that had worked for millennia was dismissed as primitive superstition. The farmers who had grown the world's best ginger were told they needed to purchase what their fireplaces provided for free. This is the story of wood ash and ginger, the ancient partnership that produces giant roots, and the industry that made sure modern gardeners would never learn that the secret was sitting in their fireplace all along. If this knowledge matters to you, subscribe and hit the bell. Let's begin. The science of wood ash and ginger growth centers on one absolutely critical mineral element that ultimately determines final root size and harvest weight. That mineral is potassium, represented by the letter K on the periodic table of elements. Potassium is universally recognized as one of the 3 primary macronutrients that all plants require for healthy growth and development. Nitrogen primarily promotes vigorous leaf and stem development above ground. Phosphorus mainly supports flowering, fruiting, and seed production. Potassium specifically drives root and rhizome development underground, which is precisely and exactly what ginger growers want to maximize for the largest possible harvest. Ginger is absolutely not grown for its leaves, stems, or flowers in any commercial or home garden application. The entire economic and culinary value of the ginger plant lies completely underground in the swollen rhizome that we carefully harvest, enthusiastically cook with, and use medicinally for countless health applications. Everything that grows above the soil surface is essentially waste material that gets discarded after harvest. The only part that actually matters to any ginger grower is the root structure that develops hidden beneath the soil surface throughout the growing season. This fundamental reality means ginger has unusually high potassium requirements compared to most other common garden plants. A ginger plant growing in potassium-deficient soil produces small, thin rhizomes regardless of how much nitrogen or phosphorus is available. The plant may look healthy above ground with lush green leaves, but the harvest will disappoint. The underground growth depends specifically on adequate potassium levels. Wood ash contains between 5 and 7% potassium by weight. This concentration is higher than most commercial fertilizers and dramatically higher than uncomposted organic materials. A single cup of wood ash contains more plant-available potassium than a large bucket of compost. The mineral is immediately accessible to plant roots without decomposition or processing. The form of potassium in wood ash is potassium carbonate, which is highly water-soluble. When rain or irrigation water contacts wood ash and soil, the potassium dissolves immediately and moves into the root zone. Plants can absorb it within hours of application. The rapid availability produces visible results faster than slow-release fertilizers that take weeks to become accessible. Wood ash also raises soil pH, which benefits ginger in most growing situations. Ginger prefers slightly acidic to neutral soil conditions. Many garden soils become too acidic over time, especially in areas with heavy rainfall. The alkalizing effect of wood ash corrects this acidity and creates optimal conditions for ginger root development. The combination of concentrated potassium and pH correction makes wood ash nearly ideal for ginger production. No synthetic fertilizer matches this combination of benefits at zero cost. The fertilizer industry cannot sell what fireplaces produce for free, which explains why this ancient knowledge disappeared from mainstream gardening education. The history of wood ash in Asian agriculture stretches back to the earliest ginger cultivation. Ginger originated in the tropical regions of Southeast Asia thousands of years before written records began. Archaeological evidence suggests cultivation started in the islands of modern Indonesia and spread throughout tropical Asia over millennia. The techniques that produced the best crops were preserved and transmitted across generations through practical demonstration rather than written instruction. Wood ash application was among the most universal of these traditional techniques. Every household that cooked with fire produced ash as a daily byproduct. Early farmers noticed that areas where ash had been scattered produced larger root crops. The connection between fire waste and underground growth was too obvious to miss. Chinese agricultural texts from 2,000 years ago explicitly recommend ash application for root vegetables. The recommendations specify timing, quantities, and methods that remain valid today. The ancient farmers understood through observation what modern soil science would later confirm through chemical analysis. Potassium from ash drives root expansion. Traditional ginger production across India, China, and Southeast Asia incorporated ash as a standard practice. Farmers did not think of it as fertilization in the modern sense. They simply knew that ginger planted in ash-enriched soil produced larger rhizomes than ginger planted without ash. The practice was so fundamental that it rarely warranted explicit mention in later agricultural writings. Colonial-era European observers documented these traditional practices extensively. British agricultural officers in India noted the ash application methods used by local farmers. Dutch traders in Indonesia recorded similar practices in the spice-growing regions. The documentation proves that Western agricultural authorities knew exactly how traditional farmers achieved their remarkable yields. This knowledge was available to Western agriculture for over 200 years. It was never hidden by the farmers who used it. It was never protected by cultural barriers. It was simply ignored as commercial fertilizer manufacturers built markets based on selling what ash provided for free. The commercial fertilizer industry emerged in the mid-19th century and immediately began displacing traditional soil amendments. The first synthetic fertilizers offered convenience rather than improved results. Farmers could purchase bags of concentrated nutrients instead of managing ash, manure, and compost. The products required less labor to apply. They could be transported easily and stored indefinitely. The marketing emphasized modernity and progress rather than actual yield improvements. The industry grew rapidly as agriculture industrialized throughout the 20th century. Fertilizer companies became among the largest chemical manufacturers in the world. They funded agricultural research at universities. They shaped extension service recommendations. They influenced what gardeners and farmers learned about soil nutrition. Potassium fertilizers specifically became a major commercial category. Products like potassium chloride and potassium sulfate generated billions of dollars in annual sales. The industry needed customers who believed they had to purchase potassium rather than obtain it from free sources like wood ash. The displacement of traditional knowledge served commercial interests directly. Every gardener who learned that wood ash provided free potassium was a lost customer. Every farmer who continued traditional ash application bought fewer commercial products. The industry had powerful incentives to ensure that ash would be viewed as waste rather than valuable fertilizer. Modern gardening education rarely mentions wood ash as a potassium source. Extension service publications recommend purchased fertilizers without noting free alternatives. Gardening books list ash as a minor soil amendment rather than a primary nutrient source. The knowledge gap serves the commercial interests that influence agricultural education. The result is that most modern gardeners throw away potassium while buying it in bags. They clean out their fireplaces and dump the ash in trash bins. Then they drive to garden centers and purchase potassium fertilizers at premium prices. They have been taught that traditional practices are primitive, while commercial products are scientific. The ginger farmers of Asia knew better for 4,000 years. The practical application of wood ash for ginger cultivation requires understanding proper methods and quantities. Not all ash is equally valuable for agricultural use. Hardwood ash contains significantly higher potassium concentrations than softwood ash. Oak, maple, hickory, and fruitwood produce the most mineral-rich ash. Pine, spruce, and other softwoods produce ash with lower nutrient content and higher acidity. The ash must come from clean, untreated wood. Painted wood, pressure-treated lumber, and manufactured wood products contain chemicals that contaminate ash with heavy metals and toxins. Only natural wood burned without accelerants produces ash safe for food garden applications. Fireplace ash from seasoned firewood is ideal. Application rates depend on existing soil conditions and pH levels. A general recommendation for ginger beds is 1 to 2 pounds of hardwood ash per 10 square feet of growing area. This provides adequate potassium without excessive pH elevation. Soils already high in pH require lower application rates to avoid creating alkaline conditions that inhibit nutrient uptake. Timing of application affects potassium availability during critical growth phases. Ash applied and incorporated into soil 2 to 4 weeks before planting allows potassium to distribute evenly through the root zone. Additional light applications during the growing season can sustain potassium levels as plants deplete initial reserves. Heavy applications should be avoided once plants are actively growing. The ash should be mixed thoroughly into the top 6 to 8 inches of soil. Surface application without incorporation allows potassium to wash away with rain or irrigation before roots can access it. Tilling or forking ash into the planting bed ensures mineral distribution throughout the zone where ginger rhizomes will develop. Combining wood ash with organic matter creates optimal ginger growing conditions. Compost provides nitrogen and improves soil structure while ash supplies potassium and corrects pH. The combination addresses multiple aspects of soil fertility simultaneously. Traditional farmers often applied both together for maximum benefit. Storage of ash requires protection from moisture. Wood ash readily absorbs water and forms calcium hydroxide, which reduces its effectiveness as fertilizer. Ash should be stored in covered containers until application. Wet ash can still be used but may cake and become difficult to spread evenly. The results of proper wood ash application on ginger cultivation become dramatically visible within just weeks of initial planting. Ginger rhizome pieces planted in properly ash-enriched soil produce noticeably more vigorous shoots during the critical first month of establishment. The initial growth advantage established in early weeks compounds significantly throughout the entire growing season, as larger leaf area captures substantially more sunlight energy for photosynthesis and plant development. Plants that establish strong early growth consistently maintain their developmental advantage all the way through to final harvest in autumn. The visible differences observed above ground reliably predict even larger and more significant differences developing below the soil surface in the rhizomes. Root system development accelerates dramatically and consistently under adequate potassium nutrition throughout the season. The expanding rhizome branches much more frequently under potassium-sufficient conditions, producing multiple growing fingers instead of a single elongated root structure. Each additional branch point represents significant additional harvest volume and weight at the end of the season. The complex branching pattern in potassium-sufficient plants creates the beautiful hand-shaped rhizomes with multiple fingers that commercial buyers strongly prize and pay premium prices for. The rhizome flesh density increases substantially and measurably with proper potassium levels in the soil. Ginger grown with adequate potassium nutrition feels noticeably heavier in the hand than its physical size alone suggests. The individual cells are more tightly and densely packed throughout the rhizome structure. The flesh contains significantly higher concentrations of the aromatic essential oil compounds that provide ginger's characteristic spicy flavor and its valuable medicinal properties. Quality improves substantially along with quantity when potassium nutrition is optimized. Harvest weights from ash-treated beds routinely double or triple compared to untreated controls. The improvement comes from both increased rhizome size and increased rhizome number per plant. Each plant produces more fingers and each finger grows larger. The compounding effect produces dramatic yield improvements that fully justify calling the results transformational. The harvested ginger stores better due to lower water content and denser cell structure. Potassium-deficient ginger tends towards spongy texture that deteriorates quickly after harvest. Ginger grown with adequate potassium maintains firm texture for months in proper storage conditions. The improved storage life adds practical value beyond the initial yield increase. Commercial ginger producers who know about ash application guard this information carefully. Their competitive advantage depends on producing superior crops at lower input costs. Sharing the knowledge would invite competition they prefer to avoid. The secrecy is economic rather than cultural. The wood ash sitting in your fireplace right now represents ginger harvests you have been trained to throw away. Every winter, millions of homes burn cordwood for heat and ambience. Every fireplace produces pounds of ash that accumulates in ash pans and buckets. Every spring, homeowners empty that ash into trash bags and send it to landfills. They discard concentrated potassium fertilizer while planning trips to garden centers to purchase the same mineral in commercial packaging. The fertilizer industry profits from this disconnect between waste and resource. They sell potassium chloride, mined from ancient seabeds, at prices that provide healthy profit margins. They sell potassium sulfate processed in industrial facilities. They sell what every wood-burning household produces for free simply by existing. Your fireplace is a fertilizer factory operating every time you light a fire. A cord of hardwood produces approximately 20 pounds of ash containing 1 to 2 pounds of pure potassium. A single winter of wood burning generates enough ash to fertilize a substantial ginger patch, plus other potassium-loving crops throughout your garden. The only barrier between you and dramatically larger ginger harvests is the knowledge that ash is valuable. Once you understand that wood ash equals potassium and potassium equals root growth, the entire equation changes. The waste product becomes the input. The trip to the garden center becomes unnecessary. The purchase becomes a gift from your own fireplace. Asian farmers understood this 4,000 years ago without any knowledge of chemistry. They observed that ash made roots bigger. They applied ash consistently. They harvested ginger that their neighbors envied. They did not need scientific explanation to benefit from scientific reality. The science now fully confirms and validates what simple observation proved across millennia of traditional farming. Potassium is definitively the limiting nutrient for optimal rhizome development in ginger plants. Wood ash contains highly concentrated potassium in immediately plant-available chemical form. Consistent application of wood ash to ginger beds reliably and repeatedly increases yields by factors of 2 to 3 times compared to untreated control plots. The fertilizer industry has spent over a century systematically making sure that home gardeners would never connect these simple and obvious facts together. They promoted commercial products as modern and scientific. They dismissed traditional practices as primitive and unreliable. They captured agricultural education and extension services to ensure their messages reached every gardener. Now you finally understand and know what they never wanted you to learn. The simple gray powder accumulating in your fireplace is powerful ginger fertilizer worth substantially more than anything the garden center sells in expensive commercial packaging. Your household waste that you have been throwing away is their direct competition in the marketplace. Your newly acquired knowledge represents their permanent loss of a paying customer. One simple powder found in every home with a fireplace. 0 cost to obtain or apply. Triple the harvest compared to unfertilized plants. This is precisely what they deliberately hid from you. This is exactly what you now know and can use. If this opens something important for you, subscribe and hit the bell. Every single like and share spreads what they tried so hard to keep buried and forgotten. See you in the next one.